So it's all about, this session's about redefining customer experience. Let me just give you a little startup with experience with my family. Yeah, I have a daughter who's pretty young. She sits and gets online very frequently. As she gets online, she puts on her headphones, which is something that Mr. Nagesh talked about at the start of the session. I had not realized this, that while she does her shopping, she actually puts on her headphones and is kind of moving to music and doing her shopping, okay? And what she's really doing for herself is creating an experience for herself while she's doing this. So while we talk about, online and all of the stuff, creating an experience for the customer, it's really about her creating her experience for herself. I was, let's say a month back, I was traveling around, and I was with my son at one of the sports retailer stores. We were just shopping around, and he saw this area where there was customization of the shoes. He started looking at how do you go about customizing all of this stuff. While he was doing it, he was totally immersed in the whole experience of the screens and all that stuff. All around him there was music, there was things about how to go about doing it, there were people all over the place. The whole point is that they were creating an ambience for him, an experience for him to go about doing his shopping. Now what this really does is, rather what was happening here, if I just take a step back and say what was really happening here, is they were creating, as I said, an ambience. They were making it very simple for him to shop and supporting it with a whole lot of music and how-tos and those kinds of things. What this results in as a result of that is he's going to remember the whole customization experience. And more importantly, he's going to remember the brand that allowed him to engage with them. Really, that's the whole point. So it's all about creating customer experience, not by just giving gadgets and devices, but it's about ambience. And I'm going to start by just throwing out a few questions to, I think we don't have Vineet yet on the panel. Vineet's in the audience, is he? Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. Vineet Purushottam just decided to join us at the last minute on the panel. He is from Easy Day, from Bharti, he's the CIO. So really, okay, let's just get, okay, so with, I was talking about my kids who are early adopters and really very quick adopters. Let me just go back to one step before I throw out the questions. My wife, for example, she is very happy with paying her bills through a checkbook. Okay, she is just very, very comfortable. But ever since she got the opportunity to pay her bills online, she realizes that it's obviously a lot more simpler and a lot more faster. It's a matter of a few minutes. You don't miss paying your bill dates. She just got plain and simple lazy. She's, with all of this stuff coming in, she is the example of an older, fairly older person who adopts technology late and takes it up in a certain manner. My kids are examples of people who just learn on the fly and are actually able to adopt technology a whole lot. What's really happening here? Let me just pose the question back to the audience. What's happening with the customer environment? What's the profile, really not profile, but how are consumers changing with time? Yeah, we've got the older, we've got the younger. How are they reacting? So maybe Dallas, if you can just start by telling us your perspective on how do you see customers?
Thanks, Vikram. With my wife, I always tell her that you are the coolest person in the world. So you define where you want to be. But nevertheless, when we think of technology and in terms of how technology is impacting our experiences, broadly we categorize people into three broad areas, right? Digital natives or millennials. Some of you would remember watching this small baby, trying to flip through a magazine, right? And he's trying to pinch the page to flip the page cover, right? Page from one to the other. You're given a physical magazine, and the baby, instead of moving the page, is actually pinching, right? So So you think of that generation, the millennials, typically a lot of them here, born in the 80s and thereafter. So the way they treat technology, the way they treat experience, it's a world of instant gratification. Right? They need things now. They want to be known. They share information about themselves, and hence they expect you to know them. Right? You know me, and then you tell me what I need. Right? So it's a very different world of people there. Now there are some of us in the baby boomers and others who would fit in there, but in general, they are the millennials, right? Or digital natives. The second category of people are the digital adopters. I put myself in there. Maybe Vikram, you can join me in that stage. Yeah. So these are people who have been exposed to technology. We test. We are typically, you look at a technology, you would want to be exploratory at first before you actually adopt them, right? You would want to figure out, does it mean something to me? Does it mean or change the way I do things? Is it more convenient for me in my lifestyle, in the context of the person I am, right? It's different for different people. So they're typically digital adopters. They're people who would pick technology based on their need, their convenience, and what they want to do. And then, of course, there is the digital Laggards, right? So I'll put the baby boomers who are 60 plus. Now, there are some who wouldn't want to do anything to do with technology. They give them something, give them a piece of phone, they will think it will explode in their hands, right? So you think of them as consumers when they engage with retailers, right? When you get into the store, you think of a store assistant who would go to them and want him to use his endless aisle iPad to try and shop for him. What would be the reaction, right? Very, very different context in terms of the person. So as retailers and as technology emerges, right, what we need to keep in mind is that there are consumer segment, and the economic entity that each of them represent may be different in the context of what you're selling to them, right? When you're selling a property, you may want to look at the digital adopters as a key segment, and then you may want to treat them very differently versus the cool music that is going on, or selling digital content would be very different, right? So in the context of a retailer, you need to look at the technology and your consumer in the context of who they are, and then finally say, okay, this is what is relevant to me, and then provide the personalized experience to that individual.
So just taking a point forward, given that you've got different types of consumers, okay, who are going to be adopting it very easily, a lot of people who are not going to adopt easily, I think let's just try to get down to what are the elements of customer experience. This topic is obviously so large that trying to get down to some actual facts as to what comprises customer experience. Is it just a matter of putting a few screens in a store? Is it a matter of somebody walking in with a tablet and just talking to you? Or is it more than just that? So maybe Vineet, if you want to just share your perspective on what is it that comprises customer experience. Let's get that base right, and then we can talk about what are the things that are enabling all of that.
Yeah, I'll just try to go quickly onto it because it's a very large topic. We can go on talking about it. Taking a cue from what he started off, while we have very clear differentiated between various categories that we said, I believe there's a very thin line between many of them until the last guy who does not even touch technology. That's a different thing. But otherwise, as retailers and as people in this space, you will have to decide as to who are you targeting, which channel do you want to target on, because there are multiple channels as well now. And for each channel, you will have to really think about what experience means. It would vary slightly between when you move across channels. Few things remain the same, like Mr. Nagesh mentioned in the beginning. There are certain things that's no compromise, and when it is quality, whether it is the experience that the customer gets after the pre-sales or the post-sales, both the things are perhaps same across multi-channels. But then when you walk into a brick and mortar store, the experience that a customer thinks he comes in expecting is different from what the experience that he expects in an online space. So depending upon which channel you play in, which channel you have to actually focus on the experience and focus there. So I'll talk about the brick and mortar space, where experience above all the things that you talk about. So You could talk about the ambience of the store, the lighting, the feel, the smell. You talk about a lot of those things as experience, but there are certain key elements which is still the same from days together, where I believe still the shoppability is an experience. So when a customer comes in, if he's able to shop for his stuff, check out and move out, that itself is the topmost experience that he believes that he expects to get from us. So among various things, I would put shoppability and the availability and the stuff being there at the right place for him to reach out, pick it up, put in his basket, check out and move out, being right at the top when it comes to experience. Various other things obviously are all important.
Manoj, do you want to add to that? Would you like to share?
Sure. I'm audible.
So I think the preface to customer experience is the customer itself. And is customer changed in last decade or so? Yes, he has. But what is it that's enforcing that customer to change is the element that are outside of the gamut of customer experience that is forcing customer to change the way he deals with the buying behavior. So if you ask me in offline world, retailers were happy that there were no technology before, the customer was walking in, and I would still categorize customer in two contexts. Either he's a wealthy customer or he's not a wealthy customer, or he's a deal-prone customer or he's not a deal-prone customer. So there were very simple analogies to identifying customer. But all these supplemental changes or the enablers that came forward, either social, mobile, in-store experience, all this put together, I think it's kind of changing the way customer is behaving. So in the hindsight, I'm looking at this way that the retailer is getting forced to create the experience to support the customer. Maybe the customer doesn't want those experiences. He still wants that in-person experience when the consumer walks in. He wants that person to talk to him. He wants some steward or a sales guy to come forward and kind of interact with him. And that is the experience he's still leaning on. But looking at all the aspects, I think we tend to believe that with time, customer has changed. With time, customer has evolved. Yes, he has. He's getting more information. He's getting more data about the brand, which he never had before, and that is forcing consumer to kind of change the way they interact with the touch point. And I think that sums up in terms of how we look at customer experience versus customer in totality.
Okay. So just taking the points that both of you all made, if I have to summarize what customer experience comprises, it's not just about what happens to them in the store. It's about how does the brand actually engage with the customer to start with? How does the customer actually come to know about it? How do they engage with it in the store? How do they engage with it out of the store? Beyond that, for example, the company will understand analytics, what's the profile of my people, and be able to feed that back into the store, etc. So, there is a lot of perspective among people that if I have got this nice mobile app, then I'm creating a great experience for my people. I have a retail store, I have a few stores, but if I create this app, it's going to really create a wow factor. Not necessarily that it may create the wow factor. You've got to look at the entire holistic view of the customer. Yes, now you've got the store, you create the app, you maybe have an online presence of certain type, but you've got to link back your web and your mobile app back into the store, be able to understand your customer and make changes within your store. I think that's the key aspect. So it's not about just creating a mobile app. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. If I go a little bit further, some of the retailers, international guys, and typically sports brands, they've gone beyond just mobile apps and websites and blogs and all that kind of stuff, and they started creating very customized devices, okay, that actually engage with that are the touch point of the customer. So for example, let's take the Nike wristband, okay. As a runner, I am extremely comfortable using that band because it gives me a whole lot of information about myself. It's able to track. What Nike is really doing here is now they're starting to touch you at a very personal level. So it's going beyond plain and simple, plain and simple web and mobile and all that stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that aspect of it. How is it expanding into beyond just plain in-store experience, and a whole lot of other stuff. Manoj, do you want to share, Dallas, Manoj, you've got some experience, I guess, internationally, if you can share some perspectives. And how does it become relevant in the Indian context, I think is what's important.
Sure. So while working with Adidas, I think I had an opportunity to work with an interactive touchscreen display called Adiverse, and what it enabled user to scan products, see the POS, the inventory of the product, see the colors, see the reviews of the product on the on-screen. And part of the reason, the objective to building that kind of a device was, or rather display, was to create a wow factor in the customer when he walks in. Second, the amount of inventory that we were carrying, the number of SKUs that we were carrying, the retail space was not equipped enough to kind of showcase that kind of SKUs that we had. So A, we didn't want customer to leave with the experience that, hey, we don't have this product, we will deliver it the next day. But then can we showcase that product at least to the consumer while he's in the store, so he gets gamified or he gets intrigued to buy that product. So that was the full agenda when we built the Adidas Adiverse.
I'll give you two examples here. One is from a sister industry, which I today branded within the retail context. Apart from traditional retail, we have banks, insurance, telcos, who today, we talked about Uberification. I call these industries are becoming retail-like. So they're retailization. So as retailers, you guys, are impacting other industries. So it's retailization, not Uberification. I'll take an example of Humana. Right, this is an insurer, one of the largest health insurers out here in the United States. And as a company, what do? They sell insurance products, right? But from an customer engagement perspective, in terms of what experience that they provide, they call themselves a wellness company, right? It's not about paying your bills. It's not about being there when you fall sick. But they essentially are in a phase where they're transforming themselves in terms of customer engagement around keeping you well, keeping you healthy. Now think about from an insurance perspective, it has financial angle to it, right? It's good for the company to be associated with wellness, and it's good for keeping people healthy because it helps them keep the planes low, right? So as a company, their entire engagement with their consumers is around keeping them healthy, So it's not about selling insurance products. It's not about telling you need this, one versus the other. Of course, there is selling and there's context of that comes in. But if you go and visit Humana's website or their apps, they will always talk about the individual and his wellness, capacity, right? What does he want to do, right? So that's one way of creating an experience for the customer, which is different in the context of what the business that you do. But more retail-centric, if you move to somebody like a North Face, right? Now, if you essentially go and try to shop at North Face, many of you would know, you're going trekking, going to a mountain, and looking for a trekking bag, right? And depending on the context and the location that you probably are coming from, they will probably suggest, here are the 4 other things that they'll probably ask you, where you planning to go, right? Are you going to trek towards in an area where the temperature is XYZ, or just ask the name of the location? So they will bring in context which is beyond traditional information, which is they'll bring in the context of weather, they will bring in the context of geography, they will bring in the context of terrain of the trek, and then suggest maybe, why don't you take a look at, people who go there, they typically take 3 additional things, right? Here is the type of shoe and the type of sole that you need to have because trek makes it simpler, right? Here are the 3 other things that you need to carry because it makes your trek easier, right? Think about the experience that it's delivering. You just looked at a rucksack to buy for a trek, but they changed that entire experience into something solving and creating a further experience for you and enhancing the experience for you. Right? So fundamentally, sometimes it's about delivering an experience that people expect, Sometimes it's also providing experiences that you don't expect, right? And hence creating value out of it for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the point I was making first, that it's about understanding your customer based on their transaction and all that stuff, understanding what's the kind of profile of the customer, and offering them things that they may not expect. That's probably the point. Indresh, you've got some experience with, you working with Kaya and past experience. Would you like to share some of the context?
Yeah, so what you touched upon with the band and what Sagar touched upon with North Face. So basically there's this whole thing about big data, right? And what